And how
Yes, they live there.
yeah, and then it was one of the leather products, right? You know how they tan leather?
Yeah.
They make the prisoners, they all urinate, and they use urine as a process to tan the leather. And when he was telling me how bad they were treated and what he saw, it really, disgusted me that, things were going on that way and people just don't realize it.
Well, you bet. And, going full circle back to what I was talking about earlier, there's so much joy and amazing things happening on this planet, and there's so much sorrow and so much pain and so much suffering in other ways on this planet. And even all of us have to admit, some of us live lives of quiet desperation. Many people are living in jobs that they really don't want to do, but they have to do to be responsible to raise their family or to pay their bills. And they're not happy. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. They retire and it wasn't their bliss, but it was their duty. And, so Earth is an interesting place where souls really purge a lot of karma. And I'm not saying all these people in China are bad people, and I'm not saying that either. What I am saying is I see a lot of suffering, and Vedic astrology was actually really unnerving to me when I first started studying it. I remember I studied with this old guy, and he's like, well, this person's like this and that and this, and I'd go, wow, that's pretty cold, And then you'd see someone else who was living the life of Riley, they was like, and the chart showed it. And I'm like, well, what kind of a God would do that, And he said, it's not about God. God had nothing to do with this. In fact, Gandhi said a great comment about that. He says, God didn't do a damn thing except create an exceedingly divine, magical place. It's us souls that are here creating what we did. And, again, when you look at the reincarnational processes, I'm not saying everybody who has a bad experience did something bad in a previous life, but when you look at the yogas and Vedic astrology, you have to scratch your head and go, well, something must have happened. I've had people knock on the door in the past. Of course, today nobody ever comes to my office, which is great because now we do it all through the internet. It's actually way better. And you get the screen record. And I audio record the phone line, too, and send them MP3s. And what I've seen is, like, I had a couple of individuals several times where I've seen certain periods, and I just went, oh, my God, what happened to you here? And then the tears pour out. You wouldn't believe it. I said, well, try me. I might. And the stories were hideous, ranging from some pretty nasty stuff to outright black magic, where they had been involved in some really stuff that you would just think is Hollywood science fiction, where they really were involved in sacrifice and stuff like that, which is hideous. The stuff we hear about, from David Icke and things, where you just go, how could that be? This is amazing. And yet the chart showed it. And it's exactly began and end right when the dosas in the Vedic astrology showed. And I'm going, why would this be? What would ever cause a soul to be subjected to this kind of treatment? We see it on the news all the time, like this crazy guy and the stuff in Las Vegas and the school shootings, and we hear about, the children being abused and the animals being abused. You just go, well, who would ever allow that to happen? And yet it's in the charts when you look at them. And you go, and then what's interesting is some of the texts that I have actually say, if you have possibly lived before, there are some people who really are mean. They really are evil, and they inflict a lot of pain on people. Well, if you take time out of the equation and you look at the possibility, consider the possibility of reincarnation, maybe that's what that soul needed to change. And I'm not saying everybody who is suffering is or was bad. They may also be agreeing as souls to play a participant in someone else's karma or reflectional circumstance. I mean, it's very complex. I don't pretend to know God's code. I just find it fascinating to be blessed enough to read it. And it's very mysterious, this whole game of fate and karma. And what I find is that there is remedies that actually can alleviate that. And they called them Lords of Destiny. In the Bible, it talks about Exodus, and there's a real riddle to Exodus. Exodus means a lot more than just the story that's told, and that is, it's the exodus of the soul, escaping from Alcatraz of the karma that it created. And every one of us have some version of that. And that gets back into repentance, prayer, and these things that religions have very rightly taught. And I actually prescribe a lot of very specific prayers, and I'm a really big fan of two treatments to that. One is I have an old Kabbalistic cleansing prayer, and the Psalms are exceedingly powerful. I refer people to these ancient texts before the religions got their mitts on them, showing how powerful the Psalms are. If anybody listening has ever heard of the Shemush Tehillim, it's breathtaking. That stands for the method of the Psalms. That's one of the interpretations. In prior, and this happened both in Judaism and in Christianity, they took the Psalms and put them between the New and the Old Testament. The same thing happened in the Tanakh. If anybody's familiar, the Tanakh is the Hebrew Bible. They put it between the Torah and the prophets. But what they took out was all the codes and the ciphers and the angel names and the purposes of the Psalms and this really amazing sacred stuff. You can't make this up. These are literally codes, mathematical ciphers encrypted into the Hebrew, which is profound. Again, it's not anything I came up with, but it's there and it's provable. And if the religions, or at least most of them, were really interested in empowering people, they wouldn't have taken that out. That's like, not giving you an owner's manual to your car. I mean, you need to know how to program the radio, at least, or, how it works. So it's amazing. And the other thing I love is gemstones. I have gotten involved. About 30 years ago, I had a teacher, Jeff, you must wear this gemstone. I'm like, come on. I said, what are you trying to do? Sell me a gemstone. And I held it. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting in a coffee shop. Oh, my God, this is really powerful. I'm buying this. And he smiled, and he said, yes. He says, now, the reason you feel that is because that is an untreated stone. And I said, well, aren't they all? He goes, oh, no. He says, 90% of the stuff out there is either synthetic, heat-treated, irradiated, or somehow altered by the miners. And I thought that was crazy, too. Well, my research has proven that that's quite often the case. Not all stones are treated, but many of them are. So I've actually used electional astrology to set stones. And I've done this for politicians, for bankers, for people in politics love this stuff because they know the efficacy of gems. And some very powerful business people know that too. They know the occult power of gems. They can improve your health. There's certain stones you absolutely want to avoid, and the only way to know that, truly, is through Vedic astrology. You cannot use your birthstone. That stuff is love, light, and cluelessness. It doesn't work. Everyone will pick up their birthstone and say, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to wear this. That's been changed by the jewelry industry several times in the last 40, 50 years, or at least a few times, I know that. And it's not accurate. You have to use sidereal Vedic astrology, and I can tell you I've had so many people tell me, I had the money, and I didn't know if I believed you, I tried it, and then they would tell me, wow, I really do feel it. I said, I know. Even if you think I'm, telling you this to have you buy a stone, I'm not. I don't need that karma. And I've had people tell me, wow, I'm not as emotional, I feel better. I had one doctor out of India. His father was dying in ICU, and he called me up. He says, Jeff, I know you do gemstones. I said, yeah. He says, my father's in ICU. I want to prolong his life and make him better. He says, he says, look at the chart. What does he need? And so I told him, and we put the stones on him, and 3 times he put them on and took them off. We saw vital changes improve, which was amazing. Yeah, and I can tell you myself that if you wear the right stones, like I've had people wear stones that weren't right for them. They got headaches, or they just found stuff didn't work right for them, or they were cloudy. And you wear the right stones, it's amazing. There are certain stones you want to wear during certain time periods They're called doshas in Vedic astrology, in certain progressions. And then you want to take them off. There are other stones that are always wear stones. Everybody has certain stones that they can always wear. It will fortify the aura. I've taken Kirlian photography, and I've actually placed my hand, picked up the stones that were good for me, and I was blowing out the plate. It was amazing. And I don't even need the science. I can feel it. I can tell. And I've found that particularly many, and they won't admit this, but many miners, particularly in other countries, have for hundreds of years been heat treating stones. And why would they do that? Because it darkens the colors. And I can tell you the Brahmin caste in the ancient India actually did not want the working class, the Sudras and the Vaishyas, to get the full occult power of gems. And that actually, we don't know how long ago, but it's been going on for a long, long time. And that's in a sense evil. Why would you do that, you know? And the miners love it because they can take inferior quality stones, heat treat them, and get a lot more cuttings out of them.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You have to really be sharp at knowing how. I've busted many people in the industry where they were selling heated stuff, and I said, it's heated. And they were, you know, they wrote a cert and said, oh, it wasn't. Well, yeah, it is. I can see it under a microscope. I had the blessing of studying with a guy who was really a expert in heat treatment and in all kinds of treatments. He just passed away from a heart attack here a few years ago. I still work with his wife. And the stuff he showed me was amazing. I dropped my jaw. I'm like, wow. I actually made a little documentary I should edit one of these days. But fascinating stuff, how it can fortify the aura. So there's certain prayers, there's certain techniques of clearing the aura and blessing. And, you know, when we get out of our heads, or what psychology would call our lower selves, our ego is another way to say it, that many people will die for what they believe, you know. Soldiers do it all the time. Look what's going on in the Middle East. You know, they will kill you if you don't believe like they believe.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, kind of crazy. But that's the way the world's been for a long, long time.
Hey, our time is almost up. What you need to do is tell people how they can get a hold of you, and, you know, do you have anything up on YouTube, any books, anything? Go ahead. You got like 4 minutes. Go ahead and plug yourself.
I've been wanting to get stuff up on YouTube. I haven't had the time to edit it, and I just keep so busy. But I do. There's stuff up on YouTube. You can go to my website. There's a lot of radio shows. There's some of them on YouTube. It's Jeff at jeffharman.com, JEFFHARMAN, not ON.com. The website's jeffharman.com, and the email's jeff at jeffharman.com. That's always the best way to get through. My wife, she's really wonderful. I couldn't do this without her. Because I'm basically a hermit. That's all I do is do readings and work on films and scripts and things. And she's wonderful because she really is great at scheduling things for me and helping me organize things.
Oh, great. But, that's great.
Yeah, that's how you get through.
Hey.
I met her at a gas station in Malibu. And she and I met, and we had a very serendipitous meeting. Synchronistic is probably a better word. And I didn't think anything of it. We exchanged cards, and a month later she called me and said, hey, remember, I'm the girl you met at the gas station in Malibu. I said, oh, yeah. So we met at this little cafe on Melrose called the Earth Cafe. It was about 20-something years ago. And that was right at the time I was trying to compensate for inadequacies and compatibility. And I brought my computer, and I cast her chart, and I said, wow. I said, you and I are kind of compatible. I didn't say it too loud, but, you know. And then I told her a bunch of cycles she was in, and it was amazing. We just got along absolutely wonderfully, you know. And it's right when I hit a cycle for that to happen. And I never got married until I was in my 40s. And it's interesting because my mother told me that. She says, your chart is such you're not going to get married early. And she was right. And I could see why she was right. I have martial affliction. You probably have the same thing. Anyway, it's called Kuja dosha in Vedic astrology. Kuja is Mars and dosha is condition. And if you have Mars